From just outside the Smith Center in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, this is TarHillIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me as he always does for our Three Things post-game video. It's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, after spending about 30 to 45 minutes walking around the arena, setting up in a couple different spots before getting kicked out, just trying to find a place to do this video where we can have some peace and quiet, we finally found a spot. Same spot as the James Madison game a few months ago as well.
Normally, when we're outside, something happens.
Oh, yeah.
Something flies over, drives by, whatever.
Yeah.
Someone wheels something. But maybe that won't happen now because we just paid our dues.
We did pay our dues.
Try to find a spot to do this. So
Yeah.
we're back out in this.
I think that's a record amount of time.
We did, like you said, JMU, we did a couple 2 years ago out here.
Yeah, I think it's a record amount of time for us to find a spot.
It's
so.
a record amount of can't do it here.
Yeah. Oh God.
So,
if you only knew, we'll have to do a podcast on just. We'll have to talk about it in a podcast, just some of our post game trying to find a spot.
I'm sure people are just loving this part.
I'm sure they would love to hear that. But that's what we're here for, AJ. 81-64 victory for the Tar Heels over Notre Dame. Big win for them. I thought it was a pretty good performance all the way around in a lot of respects, which we'll hit on here. But I want to start with bench production because I think we saw some bench production today, and that's a big positive for this team because I think that's been something they've been lacking at times this year. Puff Johnson, 11 points off the bench. DeMarco Dunn, 7 points. Jalen Washington came in and had some nice minutes as well. Heck, even Justin McCoy came off the bench and played a little bit too. Obviously, Seth Trimble getting the start over Pete Nance, who's still dealing with that back injury. You can even count him as some bench production as well when you kind of consider he's usually a guy coming off the bench. So overall, I think that was a big positive to take away from today. And if that bench production can continue as a truck pulls up right here, I'm sure that's going to make a lot of noise here in a second. It's a big positive, AJ, for the Tar Heels.
So I was going to drive over here.
Park right in front of the camera, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about bench. I did with Brandon the other night after that game, and there's so much talk about Hubert's use or lack of use of the bench. One player in particular, I'm not going to get into that here. We can talk about that in our basketball show next week.
Yeah.
But what he does is he uses the bench very situationally, based on need that day. So DeMarco Dunn gets 20 minutes at Pitt. He gets 5 against Wake the other night. I don't know what he had today. I think he had 15 today.
Yeah, he played a lot of minutes. Yeah.
So it's very situational based on what need is. And it's very much the blueprint from the NBA. When Hubert was in the NBA for so long that there were guys that would get 20 minutes one night and a DNP coach's decision the next. So that's how he's using this bench. And he can use it because he has different parts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of multiplicity on this bench, and we've seen that this week. We saw him with the big the other day and then going small late in that game, and that's how they closed it out. And then today, they were kind of small, but
yeah.
I think in modern-day college basketball, you plop Armando in the middle and you build around it, you're kind of like everybody else, right? Except very few people have an Armando. So you can kind of tinker with whatever you do because you got a dude that's going to grab.
So good, yeah.
He's Pac-Man in there. I'm dating myself. Grabbing all those rebounds, eating the pellets, and he's the way he played coming out of the double teams and everything else. He got a lot of guys involved. So I like what the bench did. I like how the bench guys are playing off the starters. A lot of times bench guys come in and they're very reserved. They yield to everybody else. No yielding from Puff. Look, guy played 18 minutes in the national title game. He's been struggling, but I thought he went in today with a lot of confidence. He said to me after the game, mental toughness has been a key for him. You got to like Dunn. He missed 5 games with the injury. He got extended playing time at Pitt. I think that gave him confidence, even though they lost that game. And he came through today. He kind of filled in that void of another scoring guard. And you got to have that when you're playing a team that's pretty long and plays zone. So, and Jalen Washington, he had a big basket, but he didn't play a lot of minutes, but I like what he was able to give him. And they know, I think, that they can spell Armando for several minutes with Jalen moving forward. We don't know how long Pete Nance is going to be out. So if you could put Jalen in there and spell Armando some, and also Justin McCoy played the 5 for a couple of minutes today, which he did a lot at UVA a couple of years ago, they're in okay shape. I know a lot of people would like to see this be Roy Williams, Dean Smith bench usage where 4 or 5 guys play a certain amount of minutes every game, but that's not going to be like that.
No.
So if that's what you're expecting, change your expectations because that is not who this team is. That's not who this coach is with this particular team. And so that's not going to be the way things are moving forward. But on what you've had here is Puff with 11 tonight. Trimble had 11 off the bench the other night. That's big time.
Yeah.
So when you have guys scoring in double figures coming off the bench, Puff a season high, Trimble a career high the other day, then that means that Hubert is getting a lot of stuff out of the bench. I'm not going to focus as much on their bench usage ranking in KenPom, which is 361 out of 362. I'm going to look at, do they get something off the bench in a given game? And if they get one or two guys to contribute with production and then quality minutes and play connected with the starters, to me that's enough moving forward for this group.
Yeah.
Because it's more than they had last March.
Oh, yeah, God, is it? I mean, we essentially no bench last year, just not choosing to use it very much. A little bit more later on, like you said, I know Puff and Dontrez kind of played a little bit more towards the end of the year, but
Dontrez had those minutes in Fort Worth out of necessity.
yeah, more than anything.
That was more out of necessity than anything else. He played pretty well.
That's a good point, yeah.
But that was then, this is now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's talk about defense.
We'll address that in the basketball show.
Yeah, no doubt. I got something. Let's talk about defense and rebounding, kind of tying those hand in hand. I think Carolina out-rebounded Notre Dame I believe it was 45-32 today.
45-32.
The defense was pretty good, too. I thought Seth Trimble in particular, starting where he started ahead of Pete Nance, had some really nice plays defensively. He's so fun to watch as a defender. A lot of room for improvement offensively, which you expect from a freshman, but defensively, I tweeted out, I think he's about as good as you can ask for from a true freshman. And even sometimes going down low and banging with the bigs, which I thought was really impressive. But
because they got a lot of switches.
Yeah, oh, no doubt about it.
Leshevsky had a lot of switches where he had a guard on him. And Seth, like you mentioned, Caleb a couple times, they gave him some body.
Yeah.
He did a nice job.
No doubt. I thought, but those hand in hand, I think we've talked about it so much at length. The Carolina rebounds and they out-rebound their opponents are such a better team. It's the bread and butter at Carolina basketball.
Yeah.
And I thought we saw some really nice things defensively for this team. And, I think that's some positive signs. I thought there was some positive signs against Wake Forest defensively as well. They're going to have to be really good defensively on Tuesday night in Charlotte to have any chance of winning.
Yeah.
And obviously pretty efficient offensively. With that score is going to be about 55-50 if we're being generous. So, AJ, what are your thoughts on just the defense and kind of rebounding, tying those two things together? Because like I thought it was pretty positive today.
I agree with you about Seth, and I asked a couple of guys today. They say Seth's defense is infectious.
Right on cue.
Right on cue.
Wouldn't be a Three Things video without something.
And
Let's
this
just
is
keep
plus
it.
coming.
Yeah.
They say his defense is infectious, and it's kind of like, and I'm kidding here, and there's no pun with the Notre Dame reference, but it's kind of like Rudy.
Yeah, I heard you say that earlier.
Remember Rudy during spring practice, and Rudy's just going at 1,000 miles a minute. One of the starters like, dude, why don't you dial it down? You're making us all look bad. Seth's kind of like that defensively when he doesn't slap the floor, but at some point that dude's going to slap the floor.
No doubt.
Because he's got all that juice in him. But he's such a good defensive player. He elevates everybody else. And what I really liked about what they did defensively today was Notre Dame shot just under 42%, which is not terrible, but it's not good. And they were right at their average, around 39% from three. But they only took 18 threes. So they weren't at their normal shot distribution rate of three, so Carolina limited that. They had some drives. I think the switches did that.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
I mean, they took away a lot of the perimeter stuff from the switches, so every once in a while, you saw Leshevsky driving. You saw Ryan driving. Goodwin got on the baseline every once in a while. You're going to give up a 2 to this team instead of a 3. That's one of the recipes in beating them. And on top of that, I'm a firm believer that rebounding on the defensive glass is part of defense because you're limiting extra possessions. 45-32 on the glass for a team that has not been very good on the rebounding this year.
Yeah, no.
They're not close to the standard of what this program has done for years, but they've had a few games lately that are giving signs that they're getting close to that standard, especially on the defensive glass. Hubert harps on that far more than the offensive glass because it limits possessions. So if you're an okay defensive team, but you're great on the defensive glass, your numbers are going to be better because teams aren't going to have as many shot opportunities. So I thought tonight they did a good job. I think maybe 7 or 8 offensive rebounds for Notre Dame, but that's fine. I think that you can live with that if you're North Carolina moving forward. And a lot of that stuff was contested. So I love the defensive rotations. I love the switching. I love how they got in some crazy matchups.
Yeah, they handled
with the switches, but they did a pretty good job. There were a few times that Leshevsky shot over a guard.
Yeah.
But he's a good player.
Yeah, he's a good player.
And that's going to happen. But overall, I think that they had Notre Dame kind of confused offensively at times. There were very few really fluid, hey, that's Mike Brey basketball possessions.
Yeah, no doubt.
One in the break when Ryan ended up with a 3 right in front of the Notre Dame bench. That was one. But in the half court, I would say that Notre Dame, when the staff grades out the film, it's not going to grade out very well. And a big part of that is because Carolina took away a lot of the fluidity they like to play with. I think Hubert said after the game, he call them beautiful? What did you describe?
It was something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think I was.
It's like a thing of beauty when they're doing their thing, when they're playing off each other. Carolina took a lot of that away. Notre Dame didn't look pretty today.
No.
At times, but didn't look pretty. And I know, don't forget what their record is. This is a veteran team that knows how to play. They're going to win some games in this league.
Yeah, no doubt.
Moving forward. So I think Carolina's defense was a bit of a carryover from the last 10 minutes from the Wake Forest game.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing I kind of want to hit on, we always, been a theme recently, we always kind of talk about what this means. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about something that was funny. We were talking about it on press row because Notre Dame cut it to, I believe it was like 7 points,
61-54.
just ahead of the 8-point mark, or 8-minute mark in the second half. And you're like, okay, this is getting close to getting. I think we turned to each other, and Brandon P was there as well. And we're kind of like, okay, this is something this team has to work on, is putting their foot on the neck of their opponent. And funny enough, Carolina ends up winning by 17. I thought in the final 5 minutes or so that they kind of showed signs of doing that. I actually asked DeMarco Dunn and Caleb Love in the post-game interviews about that, and they said, I was kind of like, is this the next step for this team? Because, there's been so many games this year. I've talked to multiple people. We've talked about this, where you kind of feel like Carolina's in control, but you look at the scoreboard and it's like a 2-point game, 3-point game, 4-point game. They haven't been able to kind of pull away. And even today, kind of up double digits for most of it. And then again, you look at the clock with 8 minutes left and it's a 7-point game. You're like, okay, this can get a little sketchy down the stretch. But credit to Carolina because they did show signs of being able to do that. And I think it was credit to the offense and the defense and being able to force some turnovers and hit shots late on when they needed to. So big game ahead with Virginia. That's a massive game. But overall, I think Carolina showing signs of being able to put their foot on the neck of their opponent is a positive, and they're going to need to show more signs of that, and they're going to have to play really well in Charlottesville on Tuesday night, or it's going to be another tough game for the Tar Heels, who, by the way, haven't won in Charlottesville. We talked about this on press row again for 10 years, I think, going back to 2011, 2012 season. So tough ask, but again, that's another positive we can take away from tonight.
I think so, and it reflects mentality. It reflects how the forward progress that the team is making. And I asked RJ and Caleb today about, hey, last Friday, remember Pittsburgh, and spoke to RJ after the game in Pittsburgh. He said, we took a deep breath. He said, today, you guys didn't take that deep breath. Then they didn't against Wake. They had the 9-point lead or whatever it was against Wake the other night, and that was right in that lane where Pitt cut into it and ended up winning the game. They didn't expand the lead, but they didn't give it up.
Yeah.
And they're understanding that you do not give up leads like that if you play defense.
Yeah.
You give up leads like that when you don't play defense. So Wake was 3 for 14 to close the game out. Now, I don't know what Notre Dame was yet. I haven't had a chance to grind out all those numbers because we were hunting and pecking around this whole place looking for a place to do this.
It took 30 minutes.
I'll have it in all my write-ups, but I think that's what they did to Notre Dame. It's 61-54. Ryan hits that 3 that I noted, and Carolina goes on an 18-7 run. That's North Carolina basketball.
Yeah.
That's what Dean's teams did. That's what Roy's teams did. And Hubert's team did that today. They didn't let up the lead the other night. They didn't extend it today. They extended it. So they took another step forward. Obviously, they're going to have more difficult teams, I think, down the road to play, that they're going to have these opportunities to do it. But you have to do that to Notre Dame. You have to do that to, I'd say, the bottom half teams in this league. You have to put foot on throat, put them out of their misery, and pull away. So they did that today. And that's a sign of growth for this team for one day, but they got to keep doing it. Yeah. But now they know. Now they're getting that taste. I asked Caleb about that becoming who they are. And I love the way he responds to some of these things because, that's who we need to be. He's so direct about it. And he's so aware of what they haven't done right and is not afraid to talk about it. And, but we got to do it again. And then we got to do it again. And then we got to do it again. So I really believe that the 2023 Tar Heels they were born here a couple weeks ago, and we're seeing them go through those stages right now. And today was a really good stage with the defensive effort, with being really good switching on the glass, getting production from the bench, and then closing a team out, putting their foot on the throat the way they did. This is the whole of the basketball team that we haven't seen in the same 40-minute span this year. So that's obviously a great thing. Yeah. What it means is they're coming together. It's still, what is today, January 7th?
Yeah.
The ACC tournament's in 2 months. So there's so much time for this
So
team
much, man.
to become a much better team. I think they're going to do that because of the things we saw today, the things we've talked about. Those are the things that make you really good. Dudes going off from three, Armando dominating the paint, those are all wonderful attributes, and they make you a good team. The things we saw today, if it continues and it becomes a part of who they are pretty much every game, that's what makes you a great team.
Yeah.
And that's what they aspire to be.
Agreed, AJ. Great way to end it and a great way to wrap this one up. Maybe the longest, not in terms of the video length, but maybe the longest it's taken to do with three things in terms of trying to find a spot and actually going out here and talking
ACC
about it.
championship game.
Yeah, that's true. We've had some.
That was like a
long ones,
28-minute three things.
That's a good point, man. But 81-64 win for the Tar Heels. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. AJ will be in Charlottesville on Tuesday night. Big game, and I know we talked about it a little bit. And Louisville Saturday. So another really important week coming up for the Tar Heels. Going to be a tough one in Charlottesville, and very, very extremely winnable game at Louisville coming up later this next weekend. So keep it locked to charlotteillustrated.com for all your coverage from those games. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload. See you guys in the next one. Thanks.